That's right, this is the Sportsman's Voice podcast. I am your host, Fred Bird. Thanks so much for tuning in. Before we get to this week's guest, let us check in on the stories happening across the nation with this week's TSV Roundup. Welcome in, everybody, to this week's edition of the Sportsman's Voice Roundup for the week of March 11th. This week, we're bringing to you a restructuring of the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources. Utah 2024 legislative session ends with financial privacy victory for gun owners. Maine lawmakers look to institute a 72-hour waiting period. Minnesota bill would create discounted fishing license while being reimbursed. Washington State FFL regulations heading to the governor's desk. This week's lead story, NASC legislators from 41 states weigh in on Farm Bill debate. That is our National Assembly of Sportsmen's caucuses. The author of this particular article, our lead story, Kent Keene, the senior manager. Kent, I think you got half the country at this point for the Midwest and Western states. Wrote on this. This is a pretty significant achievement and speaks to the power of the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation and the NASC network. Kent, welcome into the weekly roundup. Thanks so much for your hard work here, both organizing the effort and then putting your words to paper.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for having me, Fred.
Sure. So, as teased here, just mentioned, big deal here. We've got 70 state legislators representing 41 different states that signed on to a bill that's going to the House Ag Committee and the Senate Ag, Nutrition, and Forestry Committee. Talk to us about the piece, why this is such a big win for sportsmen and women across the country, and what that speaks to as far as CSF and our ability to leverage our relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. So as you may know, the 2018 Farm Bill, the last iteration of the Farm Bill, expired last September at the start of fiscal year 2024. And to date, we are without a Farm Bill. Congress was able to pass an extension, a one-year extension, but the debate about the Farm Bill is still ongoing. And so one of the things that we wanted to do, CSF is very well positioned to leverage state legislators and elevate their voice into this federal conversation through the NASC network. And so we're very proud of the response that we got for this letter. Again, over 70 legislators from 41 different states. And that was bipartisan support from both sides of the aisle across the country, something that you really don't hear about much in today's society.
Right.
Folks coming together, transcending those party lines. But when it comes to the Farm Bill's conservation and forestry titles, there really was a wide recognition across the country of the value that these programs bring to the table to all Americans, not just our producers. Our producers absolutely benefit from these programs, but you and me as sportsmen and women, we have a great opportunity to access the outdoors through some of these programs. See opportunities to improve habitat, both for fish and wildlife, and really see benefits to the environment and to society as a whole.
Talk about the incentive-based program there for private landowners and as far as access for sportsmen and women.
Absolutely. The biggest one there is the Voluntary Public Access Habitat Incentive Program, which is a pretty unique program. Is built originally off of the Kansas Walk-In Hunting Access, or WEHA. That and a few others served as the model for this federal legislation, or this addition to the Farm Bill. Originally included in the Farm Bill in 2008, has been included since. In 2018, it was funded at $50 million, spread out across the states. What's unique about VPA HIP, or the Voluntary Public Access Habitat Incentive Program, is that rather than producers being the one to apply for these federal grants, if you will, it's actually our state fish and wildlife agencies and tribal organizations. So these states and tribes develop their own public access to private land program and then apply for this federal funding that they then implement themselves. So it's, as opposed to a lot of federal reach, this is actually coming from your states and your tribes. And in some cases, it's a lot more popular that way with our landowners who are agreeing to open their land up for public access in exchange for some kind of either rental payment or habitat assistance. And what's really interesting when you talk about VPA HIP and the popularity, one, for sportsmen and women, especially where I'm at in the Midwest, public access can be the most limiting factor. And so there's a lot of success, a history of success, a history of satisfaction among landowners. And there's actually a study that came out from the Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies. They commissioned the study and found a return on investment of over $8 for every dollar invested in the program. So when
Wow.
you talk about wise use of our resources, this is one that absolutely displayed value.
Yeah, no doubt. And even more to, engaging at the local level, as you articulate in the article, our state legislators, they're on the ground with their constituents. They know what they need. They know what they're looking for. They know how to best apply these programs to the betterment of their constituents. So this is, people are trying to understand and wrap their head around Farm Bill, why it sunsets, why it gets re-upped, and the additions to it. It's a pretty lengthy piece of legislation. But knowing the benefits and why our sporting community should be paying attention, should be engaging locally, and then allowing those local representatives to reach up through their congressional colleagues, it's a pretty big deal. And then, as demonstrated here with the efforts that you put forward.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you for that, Fred. And for those interested in learning more about the Farm Bill, not necessarily the process, but the Farm Bill itself and the benefits that it carries for sportsmen and women, would very much encourage you to check out farmingforhabitat.org. That's a coalition of several partners, CSF included, who are dedicated to breaking down the Farm Bill into especially the conservation title, to its most basic parts, and really trying to explain the benefits that carries for landowners, for the average citizen, and then obviously most important for us, sportsmen and women.
And as always, you can go to congressionalsportsman.org. You can check out our position papers and our issue brief that's found on the website there. Take a look at. I know that we have a position paper on Farm Bill, so that's another resource for you. In closing, I've teased it in past full feature programs, but we will be having a series specific to the Farm Bill upcoming here in 2024, kind of once we figure out what's going on the Hill. But once we have a good understanding of where we're going in this very hot political climate that we're in during the presidential election process of 2024, we'll be bringing that to you, and you will see Kent, and he will bring his expertise to the show, and we'll deep dive many sections of the Farm Bill more so that you all have a better understanding. And if you're a legislator listening to this, it's beneficial to you too. So when your constituents are knocking on your door, hitting your email, or ringing you, this is what they're talking about. So this is for the benefit of all. Kent, great work on this. Thanks so much for joining us here on the TSV Roundup. Continued success, my friend, and we'll see you real soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, Fred. Appreciate it.
Thanks again to Ken Keene for coming on and breaking down the Farm Bill there. All right, in other news, let's get into it. CSF leads coalition opposed to restructuring the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources, brought to you by my colleague Connor Barker out of Kentucky. So I'm not going to read verbatim here. You guys are always welcome again to read our TSV EPUBs on congressionalsportsman.org, or if you subscribe, and I highly encourage you, this will hit your inbox every Monday evening or Tuesdays if we have a holiday. That plug said, here's what's going on in Kentucky. Senate Bill 3 would, 1, administratively attach the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources to the Department of Agriculture, and 2, authorize the Commissioner of Agriculture to appoint all members of the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Commission. No state fish and wildlife agency in the country is attached to their respective Department of Ag, as proposed in Senate Bill 3. CSF coordinated an action alert with conservation partners, asking sportsmen and women in Kentucky to encourage their elected officials to oppose Senate Bill 3. CSF has also submitted written testimony to the Senate Veterans Military Affairs and Public Protections Committee, where the bill is currently awaiting legislative action. Additionally, Senate Bill 3 contains an emergency clause in it, if enacted, would allow the Commissioner of Ag to immediately begin making appointments to the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resource Commission. Currently, 5 of 9 commission seats are vacant and would therefore be subject to appointment by the Commissioner of Ag, potentially leading to an immediate overhaul of the agency favoring ag interests. A lot to be said here. Probably worth putting together for a show down the line here. I know we've covered recently about the makeup of commission and boards, but this is another layer of that onion as far as in-state agencies or commissions taking over fish and wildlife, DNRs, whatever it's called in your area, and why it's a bad idea. And why, in this case, you have some special interests that could definitely obstruct or get in the way of sound wildlife management and the mission of our state agencies for ensuring the resources are managed, well maintained, and access is provided for the citizenry to enjoy as they see fit, lawfully, ethically, and otherwise. So if you're listening in Kentucky, you're going to want to get involved here. Moving on. Maine. Lawmakers look to institute a 72-hour waiting period for firearms transfers. This is not a new idea. It is prevalent throughout the country, but especially West Coast, East Coast states where a lot of firearm legislation try to do good things with unintended consequences, or some definitely intended, as some legislators look to circumvent the Second Amendment, look to reduce access to the citizenry, or bring us back to the Stone Age with flintlock weapons. So at any rate, what's going on in Maine and why it's a bad idea by yours truly here. So late in February, Maine Legislative Docket 2338 was introduced, an act to address gun violence in Maine by requiring a waiting period for certain firearm purchases. It's a legislative piece that imposes a minimum 3-day waiting period transferring firearms. This was introduced in the Committee of the Judiciary. The sportsman community has been the primary driver of critical legislation at both the state and federal levels to ensure the NICS background check system, that's the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, NICS, process is effective and most effective as possible by incentivizing states to provide accurate and updated records of prohibited persons to the FBI. The proposed waiting period would likely discourage the sale of firearms by lawful users, as sportsmen and women would be inconvenienced by having to make multiple trips to their dealer, unintentionally driving business to a neighboring state. On March 7th, the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation submitted testimony to the Committee on the Judiciary, opposing the legislation and urging lawmakers to do the same. Back to that last the preceding point there. It sounds weird about being inconvenienced, but in a state like Maine, where that is our largest state in the north, in New England, and much of it very rural, I can speak to this on a few different levels. I mean, just basically at the basic level of, I want to get a new firearm for my outdoor pursuits, or for going to the range, and say my closest FFL is, I don't know, 30, 40, up to an hour away from me. I got to go down there. I got to spend the gas to get to that FFL, initiate the process, drive home, wait a few days. Depending on the weather and the state of the time, especially up here, that could delay even more. And I guess to the point that, aside from having to make extra trips, spending extra gas money, potential issues with getting there and working around life and scheduling, we have this right. If you were a lawful purchaser and there's nothing excluding you from that 4473 that's on that checklist from owning a firearm, it needs to be done same day, expedited. This 3-day wait period definitely is discriminatory to our community and is one of the bigger problems. Always done in the under the guise of community safety and trying to do something good or put a Band-Aid on a much bigger problem. I think what needs to happen is working with our partners in the space, NSSF and the like, identifying root bigger causes and not just putting 3-day Band-Aids on something. You can read the article there. If you're in Maine, you want to get involved, take action where you see necessary there. I would definitely recommend opposing that. Heading over to Utah, 2024 legislative session ends with a victory, privacy of gun owners. This is written by my colleague Barry Snell. The 2024 session of the Utah legislature came to an end on March 1st. House Bill 406, entitled Firearms Financial Transaction Amendments, has passed both the House and Senate and has been sent to the governor's desk, Governor Spencer Cox. 406 prohibits financial institutions from using firearm-specific merchant category codes by payment processors, which can be used to track purchasing behavior of hunters and gun owners. Governor Cox is a member of the Congressional Sportsmen's Foundation Governor Sports Caucus and is expected to sign 406 into law. CSF has been working with the Utah Sportsmen's Caucus on legislation as well as members of the governor's staff. CSF has sent the Governor Cox a letter of support urging him to sign 406. Again, brought to you on this program here in the past, the merchant coding issue, written by myself and a couple other colleagues. This is yet another tactic that is sweeping the nation, and it seems like every other week, somewhere in this country, one of my colleagues and the professionals are dealing with this, and it's some of it is one way or the other. In this case, we have a proactive bill, much like we've seen here in New Hampshire, where legislators are looking to protect the privacy, the interest of their constituents, firearm purchasers, and even more. Some of these points is like specific to the one in New Hampshire. If I went into a Bass Pro Shops or a Cabela's and I was purchasing, I don't know, cast iron camp set to cook when I go camping, or a sleeping bag, or a new sweet pair of Crocs, because of where I purchased that is now flagging a merchant code transaction, depending on the state and what they're looking to do. So these proactive bills are great because they're looking to stop all of that. None of this needs to be collected. It doesn't need to be observed. It's lawful in every aspect, and that's where it should end. And in which you end up with the opposite side is legislators in other states looking. New York is one, I think, right now that is looking to put in to law these merchant codes and make sure that they're on the books, setting up a soft registration. Just a total invasion of privacy, truly. And then there's this Orwellian way of tracking. Terrible idea there. Great idea here in Utah, and well done by the team working with the boots on the ground. And we look forward to hearing of that bill being signed into law by the governor. Utah. Minnesota bill would create discounted fishing license while reimbursing the agency for lost revenue. Again, another topic we've covered here in the past. It's a very impossible subject to come out of with our position looking good from a PR standpoint, right? An agency or a legislator gets an idea. Hey, let's recognize a group of veterans, disabled veterans, disabled hunters, resident senior hunters, whatever it is. In this case, created discounted fishing licenses. That revenue goes away when you either offer a discounted license, a lifetime license, free license. The agency needs to make that up. And when we talk about Pittman Robinson and, the funding mechanism that and Dingell Johnson provide, those are matched dollars. Those are based on the agency bringing in those license sales. And there's a ranking there, and that that appreciation of those sales goes to the share of the federal funds. So this is why it's important when we say at CSF why we're opposed to free licenses. It's not that we're jerks and we're not trying to recognize the importance of these certain groups. What we are recognizing is that we don't want to depreciate what could be coming to your state agency and fulfilling the potential there and allow for mission delivery of your state agency and working for all sportsmen and women. Now, if what is being done here looks like if there's a reimbursement program in place, then go forward and do it. Then that's a great opportunity. So let's check out what Minnesota's got going on. Legislators frequently introduce bills providing specific groups. So we just talked about creating these opportunities, reimbursing the state wildlife agency for the revenue from discounted licenses is a sound method of ensuring that diverse groups can receive these benefits without decreasing critically needed conservation funding. Breaking this trend, recently introduced Minnesota House File 3876 follows the framework of Tennessee, New Jersey, and Michigan and would authorize discounted fishing licenses to seniors while reimbursing from the Minnesota General Fund to Minnesota Game and Fish Fund. The amount of the revenue that was not realized following the discount. So there you go. Here's an opportunity to do good. Everyone feels good about what they're doing, and there's that funding mechanism is still being appreciated. So that's great. People working together in Minnesota and doing good things there. Finally, let's go over to Washington State. Washington State FFL restrictions heading to the governor's desk. New legislation proposed in Washington State demands expensive security upgrades in the name of public safety and crime prevention. This legislation continues to progress despite reports from Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms showing that thefts from firearm retailers amount to only 3.2% of incidences reported annually. If enacted, this bill is expected to be detrimental to an already highly regulated industry and will limit access to legal firearm purchases. At the end of February, in a near party line vote, Washington State Senate passed engrossed substitute House Bill 2118, an act relating to protecting the public from gun violence by establishing additional requirements for the business operations of licensed firearm dealers. That's not hard to remember at all. Under the guise of public safety and preventing thefts from firearm dealers, this bill would place extreme requirements on those businesses. These restrictions would do little to prevent gun thefts in the state, as most firearms reported stolen were taken from private citizens, with only 3% of the reported thefts occurring in a licensed business. The restrictions are so extreme that even the Seattle Times, known for their support of gun control, called them onerous and likely to open even wider the black market for gun sales. The bill will force dealers to choose between expensive security upgrades to comply or shuttering their business altogether. Here we go. Once again, in the same roundup, we have another Band-Aid situation, another we got to do something so everyone thinks we're on it and not addressing the bigger problem. And look, and even the last sentence here about what it could possibly do. It's either going to be super costly to comply or shuttering the businesses. And you got to wonder if that's part of the strategy. It's certainly not out of the question. You either comply or you die. This is something like you see in microstamping or some other proposed regulations where it's just so expensive to manufacture, to be in compliance, and those costs are passed down to the end user, to the final purchaser, that you, through attrition, are losing your market and by proxy, lose your business and your livelihood because no one's paying the bills. You have no markets because the stuff's way too expensive. So here you go, another one here. No no surprise, Washington State, again, you listened last week, the last full feature program with Marie. Just the Northwest is just is a flame right now with just incredibly insane policy as it concerns sporting community, firearms at all. No lack of challenge out there. So if you're a Washington resident, man, it's an uphill battle, but you gotta maintain the course and keep emailing and phone calling and organizing, because if you don't do it, no one else is gonna. Additionally here, last note on this, all licensed dealers must carry a general liability assurance policy providing at least $1 million of coverage per incident. Failure to meet these provisions on the proposed law could result in a Class C felony and revocation of the dealer's license. Again, this is a lifestyle. This is a livelihood killer. Well, there you have it. This is our first standalone TSV Roundup. Thanks for your patience on this. This is going to be a weekly offering, folks. This is every Wednesday. You can look forward to this. Much like we had Kent come on, our lead story every week, we will bring on the article author, introduce you to them, let them speak to their issue or what they're reporting on, and then give you the news of the week throughout the country. I hope you find it resourceful. I hope you find this beneficial to your week. At least keep up what's going on throughout the country. And if we're hitting on notes in your state specifically, you're a sportsman or woman, you're a legislator, if you have questions, certainly you can reach out to that article author. If you're a policymaker and you think you got a better way or you want to collab on something, the SPT member in your area is going to be a good place to start, and then working through your legislative sportsman's caucus. So all that said, that's this week's roundup for March 11th, the week of March 11th. Thanks so much for tuning in. We'll see y'all next Wednesday. Tomorrow, join us for a full feature Sportsman's Voice podcast. We're talking trapping. I'm so excited. I can't wait. National Trappers Association, Fur Takers of America, join us. Until next week on the Roundup, until tomorrow, thanks so much for listening. We'll see you guys soon. Thanks so much. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your support is crucial, and you can help us out right now by leaving a review, filling in those 5 stars where available, sharing this episode with friends and family, and engaging with us socially. CSF can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Together, we can protect the outdoor sports we love and continue to keep you informed wherever you are. That's it for this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.